demonstrated the different techniques that were involved in producing a carving like this, from the rough power tools that we use to the fine surface carving that our technician was demonstrating. And all of that is intended to bring out the emotions, the feelings, in a sense, the inner soul of the figures that are being portrayed here. And with that comes an extreme attention to the details that are required to illustrate those points. So what you have here is the finished product that has gone through all of this carving, but at this point it's now ready for the final finishing of colors and stains that are to be employed. And in order to achieve that, we have to equalize the surface of the wood, because with this fine detail you could have issues such as the lamination lines. So for example, this is a piece of wood that came from one of the carvings, and you can see the difference in the two colors here of two sections of wood that have been glued together. In addition, you also see the lamination line, and sometimes you see mineral marks within the wood itself. So this dark streak is actually a mineral mark that goes right through the wood, and there's no way that you can actually predict or control that, because you may be carving into the surface and all of a sudden you discover a flaw like this. So in order to eliminate that, so that when it's finished, the attention goes to the details being shown and not, for instance, a lamination line that may appear right through the middle of a face, we equalize the entire surface with what we call a base coat, which is an oil stain, just like you would stain finished wood. But in this particular case, this oil stain is the color of the natural wood. It is wiped off to a certain degree, but it equalizes all these variables so that we start from a level playing field when we are going to color it and subsequently finish the last details in order to bring out the three-dimensionality. Okay, so as part of the staining process here, you start with a variety of colors. You have to obviously determine how this is going to be broken down, because it's much like painting a canvas. The coloration has to reflect the historical aspects of the type of garb people wore back then. In addition to that, there are traditional aspects to be considered. For instance, Mary is always shown with blue, whereas Joseph, the worker, bright colors aren't really the type of approach that Joseph is shown with. So you have to first of all determine the design of how you break down the colors within these areas. What is being used here are basic oil paints that you would use on canvases. So this is pigment mixed together with linseed oil, and it is thinned down in viscosity, so it functions like a stain that you would have on any kind of wood staining application. It is applied and wiped off to different degrees, and because you're relating it to the variety of colors that are available through these oil paints, literally anything is possible. Any range of color, any modification you can mix up as you go through in order to achieve whatever the design intent is of the overall piece. So where I'm starting is with Joseph's headband section. That's going to be the lightest variation on his overall coloration. jumping ahead, in this upper area, the way I was demonstrating the application of the staining, that has now been extended throughout the piece, the same techniques. And you can see the brown garment that Joseph is wearing, how it continues all the way through. And then the introduction of the inner garment color, which has to contrast with the outer garment, and then finally the head garment that goes on top that has to contrast again. So I'm finishing the blue garment as it butts up to the cloth that surrounds the Christ child. Once again, it's more like a thinned down wash, which is what a stain is, in a sense. This in a very limited way on the brush, so therefore I'm emptying the brush first, leaving only a little bit left on. And the idea is to highlight the texture. Another brush, which is dry, and try to blend it a little bit better. So basically I'm staining the high points on the textured surface, leaving the low points with the darker color that has already been applied as a stain. I'm also trying to equalize it so that it looks like it flows. And the purpose of this is to indicate that this white cloth wrapping around Christ is a different cloth than the cloth that is across Mary's shoulder and Joseph's inner garment. Each one has got a different hue to it, even though they're light. And through that, we're creating a further illusion of depth of this particular cloth around the infant being in front of the cloth that is across Mary's shoulder and runs down.